Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, back doing those pandemic projects, and I think we all have a basket or a box or a wish list or something to do involving fishing stuff that we just don't have the time to get around. And here's one of my boxes. I've been cleaning up my shop, and there's probably about 50 Mitchell 300s in varieties of what it is. The 300A, the older Garcia Mitchells, the Mitchells by themselves. I even got one in here from Japan, from International. But interestingly enough, as I've been going through all of these, deciding to tune them up, one of the ones that came out is going to be the subject of today's podcast or video or what have you. And it's not a Mitchell at all. It just looks like a Mitchell. I found this reel in the box. It's a nice little reel. Kind of looks like a Mitchell because of the button up top there. And a lot of the things kind of look the same, but then a lot of the things look differently. And here's the reel. It's a Ted Williams 450. Who was Ted Williams? For those that are too young or don't follow baseball or whatever, Ted Williams was a baseball player from 1939 to 1960. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He played for the Boston Red Sox, and he was an avid outdoorsman, particularly with fishing. He was a fly fisherman. He liked to fish for Atlantic salmon, makes sense up in Boston. He liked to fish for tarpon and for other fish down in Florida, and he actually hosted an outdoor show in the 1970s after his baseball career as a player and a manager was done. He did have a show, and they did all kinds of things, not only fishing but hunting as well. And at any rate, the brand, the Ted Williams brand, says Sears Roebuck Company, and it has the Sears model number after it. And at first glance, as I mentioned, it kind of looks a little bit like a Mitchell. Right, same kind of properties, metal, construction, and all. But then as you go underneath the reel, there's this telltale here, and it's on a lot of the Sears reels. It says engineered and designed in USA, manufactured in Japan, and that almost always tells you that it's a Daiwa reel. Daiwa was making reels for Sears Roebuck at the time. They made them under the Sears brand. They also made them under King Neptune. So we're going to take this apart. I'll show you what the reel is. I'll be surprised myself because I haven't had one of these opened. And we'll just kind of tune this thing up. It seems to be in pretty good shape, other than the bail wire seems to be riding a little low. But other than that, seems to be running. So let's get started. So as many of you know, I use a parts tray. Didn't have one there. I happen to have my parts tray full of Mitchell stuff as I'm trying to do one of those a day and try and get rid of some of the to-do projects out there. But I wanted to grab a parts tray. It's nothing more than the bottom of a milk jug, and there's a through screw here. So I'm going to take the handle off by unfastening that through screw. You'll notice I have a glove on my hand here. That's to kind of protect me from the grease and other chemicals that are inside the reel. And the parts tray just helps keep track of all of the stuff that comes off the reel, so that when I go to reinstall, I can find it. This reel looks like it's in pretty good shape. There's a little bit of accumulated grease on the back here, but it does appear, at least at first blush, that this reel has been taken care of. Got nice paint on it. Doesn't seem to have too many scars from use. So overall, surprise find. And now we'll just get it tuned up and give it a second chance, as the company name suggests, Second Chance Tackle there. So if you're new to this, if you're new to watching these videos, I'd ask you to subscribe. If you like it, please indicate that. If you have comments and questions on any kinds of fishing related maintenance and the like, ask them regardless of what the reel and the video was showing, and I'll try and answer them. I try to answer all comments and questions. I do notice during this pandemic that some of these comments aren't coming through. I don't know if YouTube is just totally overwhelmed with the usage as people are sitting home trying to figure out what to do. It's a possibility. I noticed that my views and hours watched has certainly gone up, so that could be an indication of that. But regardless, leave a comment and I will try to get back to you when I do see them. We've removed the 3 case screws. We're going to take that off. And yeah, this one's been relatively maintained. It's got blue grease in it, so at least it hasn't changed color. Maybe has a little bit too much, but you know, that's kind of indicative of good maintenance practices there. I'm trying to get this down to the point where I can remove that crosswind block. And it's not coming down that far, so I'm thinking maybe this main gear just pulls out, and it does. And then here's an interesting thing behind it. It's the drive on the back of the main gear for the crosswind gear. Apparently it just sits on there. And then we can get to removing the axle. And then we're starting to see the old grease in here. So my guess is whoever maintained this reel just kind of took a brush or something and put some grease on what they could reach with the brush and left the rest, because behind here it's kind of got a lot of dirt in it. So we'll fix that. I'm going to take the axle shaft and spool off. You can do that in one shot. We could have taken the spool off there with the pushing that button in. Got a lot of old grease here now, so as well as it may have been maintained, this stuff just looks muddy at the moment, and we're just going to make sure all of that gets cleaned. I'm going to use paper towels, I'm going to use cotton swabs, and I'm going to use elbow grease just to clean this stuff up. If you need to, you can use a penetrating oil or some other kind of degreaser to help clear the channels and get rid of some of the old grease. But in this case, it's fairly liquid. It seems to come off with just some rubbing, and now you can see why I'm using that glove on my hand. I'd like to tell you, if you don't know the reel, if you're not that experienced with doing reel repair, then take pictures along the way. Even as I am experienced in this, I have my camera running here, and that's an indication of if I get stuck, I can go back to the video and I can find out where a particular part belonged, or what sequence I took them out in, or other things that might answer a question that I may have in terms of orientation of a piece or a part or something. So don't be afraid to take pictures. It's a good practice to get yourself into, and it's a lifesaver from time to time as you get stuck on a particular issue. So I'm just cleaning up the case here. Old grease tends to bog down reels, and at a minimum, you know, replacing the grease is a good practice. At a maximum, it's a lifesaver in terms of the performance of the reel, and in making sure that some of the stuff that is old grease isn't contaminated with some dirt and grease and grime like this putty stuff here. You want to make sure that all of that gets cleaned. So I have no idea about the history of this reel, and as many of you know, I kind of get into this repair, rebuild, resell, reuse kind of a methodology here. One that says, you know, let's get this stuff out fishing again. And when I go to do it, I pride myself in anything I sell has been serviced. I don't flip reels, and I make sure that I know that the reel is sound and ready to go fishing again. So that's why you'll see, even on some of the lesser valued reels, I will go through the exercise, and a lot of times you'll see it on video here, about cleaning the reel and taking care of it, and making sure that I'm comfortable that the service has been completed and completed well, so that somebody who picks this up from me doesn't think poorly of me in terms of, gee, what a seller, he sold me a piece of junk or something. And because I do service reels, when I do go to sell these things, and they're at local markets, I don't sell too much on eBay. People have asked me from time to time if I sell on eBay. Not much, but I do feel comfortable that I can make a claim that says if that reel breaks, I will repair it for you. So It gives the customer that extra level of assurance there that they can feel good about that reel. Okay, that case is a whole lot better than it was. I'm using a penetrating oil, in this case CRC Power Lube, just to give it a shot to break up some of that more stubborn grease that's been laying around there. Okay, let's go up top here then and pull that nut off. Let's see if that's a 12 millimeter. I don't think so. Unfortunately, I've got a lot of things on my desk open here. That's one of the things that's probably my fault. I tend to start a lot of things and not finish many from time to time. And this downtime here has been giving me the opportunity to go do just that, to go finish it. Okay, I've got to stop the video here and get myself a socket because that's too deep for a wrench to reach. Okay, we're back with my socket. It happens to be a 12 millimeter socket, and I needed that extra reach there because my wrench wasn't reaching it. There's no sense trying to do it on an angle and wrecking the nut. So that nut is off. Then we can pull up the rotor, remove that. You can see that we have a ball bearing in here. We got a bunch of grease in here too. So let's go again and kind of soak that and get the grease off and see what's underneath here. So this reel has a C-clip that's holding that in. Let's see if we can get there with this. I'm going to try and get that C-clip out and remove this. Sometimes it's a little nervy, but we'll give it a try. We'll see what we can do here. That C-clip rides in a groove. It's much like a clip that's inside of a bail, and that's why they call it a C-clip. Kind of looks like a C. And there's no sense not doing that. And when we did that, our bearing should come up. The pinion gear came from below, but that can come up as well. And then we can clean the rest of this channel. I'm leaving this on a table. Normally I would put this stuff in a parts tray. I can actually put the cross block in there. But that's going to go right back in as soon as I get the house cleaning done on this. So just going to leave these right there. Clean that channel up. I'm using a paper towel for that, just getting the extra grease off. So it looks like somebody probably took the care to go in and probably put a couple of drops of oil in the main body, but these are all pretty much of a different time in terms of the accumulated dried greases and the like, and they probably didn't have the courage or the desire to take the rest of this off. And just a note, I get asked from time to time if I repair reels by mail. I do. If you have a reel like this and maybe you grew up fishing with it and you can't find anybody to service it for you, or maybe you just don't have the mechanical aptitude or the desire to go ahead and take it apart, and you want to have me do that, go ahead and send me an email to the email address at the end of this video, and I'll let you know all about the servicing and the like. Alright, so I've got the stuff out of the channels here. I've just put a little bit of grease on there. I'm going to grab a little wire brush just to make sure that I finish that off there and I have all clear channels. Get that muddy old grease out of the way. It looks a whole lot better now. We have the bearing here. We also have a little piece of line that was probably caught in there. I'm just going to give that a quick shot of that penetrating oil just to run it around there, and then I'm just going to dry what I can out of that and put some real oil, and I'm using Real X in this situation. It's a synthetic real oil, and folks ask me from time to time, you know, do I need to use, well, in this case this is a Daiwa reel even though it doesn't say it, do I need to use the particular manufacturer's reel oil, and the answer is no, but you do need to use fishing oil. Don't use 3-in-1, don't use sewing machine oil, don't use other things like that can get in the way there. So there's why you use a parts tray. I just had that C-clip get grabbed by the paper towel and cause a problem. So this one is actually a snap ring, I think. I'm seeing the little snaps in there, the holes for it. Yep. And if you have a snap ring plier, I do somewhere. So this would be a snap ring plier. If you have that, you can actually insert those little snap, and I guess this is the wrong size for that, but you could set those picks in there and work the snap ring that way. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put it back in by hand. There's not that much force that's needed to get that done here. Okay, I'm going to put some grease onto the freshly cleaned pinion gear. Put some grease onto the shaft of it. Reset that bearing. Then we're going to put that back into the case. This bearing will probably pop out, or the bushing will probably pop out as I go to set this. Actually, since we can do that, it's probably going to be easier to put that snap ring in without that pinion gear there. Start in the back, try and get that set into a side. Bring one side over, and again, it's not going to be easy, but you should be able to do it. If you can't, go get the snap ring pliers. I'm going to just use a screwdriver, and I'm in on that side. They're fairly substantial. Keep your hand on it. It is a spring, and it can shoot. There we go. We're set in there now. That's locked tight now. Just try, there we go. I just heard that snap there, so very good. All right, and then we put the pinion gear in from underneath here, and we can start the reassembly process then. So we know that the next thing up was a crosswind gear. We've got most of the junk off of that. Just do a final cleaning on this one. And again, the old grease is going to bog it down. While you're doing that, check all the teeth, make sure they're all there, that they're not chipped or broken. Once you clean it, you can come back in again with some grease on the teeth. You don't have to put them on all of them. On the face of it, because you're going to have the block riding on that, on the back as well. Well, this is the front and the back, but make sure that the stud comes all the way down here. And we can clean up the main gear. Again, that's kind of puttied up. And I think what happened here again was that somebody came in on the front end of this, but then got a little bit overwhelmed or lazy, or just didn't feel comfortable working on it, and just kind of stopped with putting some grease onto the face of the gear. And interestingly enough, the face of the gear, the only thing that's doing there, if you're greasing that, is greasing the anti-reverse, which is going to catch these ridges here. So regardless, we're going to take care of all of that. Again, I'm just going to put a little bit more in there, one more shot. Folks ask how long or how frequently you should clean reels and lube them. Of course, the answer is it all depends. But at a minimum, if you're going to be fishing with the reel, you want to take the time on an annual basis. I mean, these are extraordinary times where we actually have the ability to go sit down and do something because we're kind of forced to be indoors. But you should do it on an annual basis, and it doesn't take long. I mean, this video is going to run about 20 minutes. And that's from me talking over it and telling you all the stuff to do. Once you get the hang of this, and once it's your own reel and you've done it a couple of times, probably can be done in half the time. Same thing with the back here, that drive gear for the crosswind. We just want to make sure that that's got the appropriate greases on it. Got a bushing on the back end there, so not much going on that one. We're just going to put a little bit of grease onto the shaft where that bushing is going to go through. And then what we want to do is we want to grab the crosswind block that we cleaned up. There's a channel here for that. We're going to get some grease into the channel so that that stud can move easily. A little bit of grease on the sides because that's going to ride up as such. In this case, I didn't take that spool off. You can just simply push the button and your axle shaft will come off. And what we'll do is we'll grab that axle shaft. Oops, I'll put the rotor on first. See, it's a good thing I took that rotor off because there's a little bit of stuff that's coagulated around there as well. Let's get that off. So this tells me this thing hasn't been off in a long time because you got the dried grease there. So just take the time to do it all, especially as I mentioned, now you have the time, so go ahead and do it. A little bit of WD-40 or penetrating oil to loosen that up, make it nice and clean. Bring that back on. There's a little keyway here, make sure that that sets properly. So we got some junk on that too. So even though the wheel was spinning nicely when I pulled it out of the box, again, it's something I wouldn't want to flip without doing the service on it, because it's little things like this that do have a detrimental effect on the performance of the reel. Alright, I'm going to go grab my socket wrench and tighten that down. Give it a spin to make sure that it's working nicely, which it is with that ball bearing. You would expect that. And then you have a little stud here where the spring for the bail works, so put a little bit of oil on that. While you're at it, you can put a little bit of oil behind the joints to both sides. This is just a dead end here, so there's no oil needed on that. Grab the assembly now. Now we can put in the axle shaft. If you found that you had some grease and grime and buildup on that, go ahead and take a piece of steel wool, because the smoother this is, the smoother it's going to work, going in up and down through that pinion and all. You don't have to put a lot in there. If you put too much in there, it's just going to run itself off. You can see kind of how it kind of bundles up there. And just line your hole up here for your set screw. You go into your box here and get that screw that you took out before. And then just make sure that you're working with that. And we can put this, I think what we're going to have to do here, let's see if we can pull that in. No, we can't. You're going to have to mesh this onto your crosswind block, and then you can come in with the main gear. And then you can give it a spin and see what we have here in terms of it driving. It's driving nice and smooth. So then we just need to grab the shim off of the case, because that's going to go on top of the gearbox there. And then this needs to be off. I think we're in the off mode here. So that when you go to install it, you can see we have a flat spot here. You want to put the flat spot under before you put the case on. And then we can grab the 3 case screws. And I noticed on the way out that the 3 case screws here were all the same in terms of size. You should try and pay attention to that as you disassemble a reel. If you find that the case screws vary, that there's a larger one or a shorter one, then you want to make sure as you go through that. There we go. Didn't hear the snap before. if there's a short one, to finish my thought here, make sure you know where that short one goes, or vice versa. If there's a long one and a bunch of short ones, make sure you know where the long one goes. Okay, so we're pretty much set there. We just need the handle. And you need the set screw on the other side. This is a nice reel. It's like likely to be in the 1970s, maybe 73, 4, 5. That's when he had his outdoor shows, and he was quite the celebrity. As I mentioned, he got into the Baseball Hall of Fame. What I didn't mention was that Ted Williams also wound up in the International Game Fish Hall of Fame as well, the IGFA, because of his advocacy of fishing and what he brought to the sport. I'm going to tighten this down, see if we're working fine with the drag. We are. Okay, there you go. There's the Ted Williams, aka Daiwa, even though it says Sears Roebuck on it, fishing reel, single ball bearing, 2 bushings, metal case, circa 1970, a nice reel that I just happened to find in with my Mitchells. So this one's done, and I'm going to have the pleasure now of turning my attention over to some of those Mitchells that are also in that box. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe. I'm always looking for subscribers. That's what kind of keeps my channel vibrant. And I also look for comments. I try to answer all the comments I receive, regardless of whether it's in this particular reel or not. So with that, stay safe and well during this pandemic. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.